this?
This is our boat now!
It's mine, and you're drifting? Deal with it!
The entitled neighbors who partied on my boat, so I set them adrift. They didn't just throw a party near my boat or next to it, they threw it on it. My deck, my cushions, my father's irreplaceable wine. Strangers danced like they'd bought tickets, toasting to community as if I didn't exist. What I did next might sound extreme, but when people treat your property like a public park, your thinking changes. I cut them loose, sent them drifting into open water. Was it too much? Maybe. But let me tell you how it all unfolded, and you decide. My name's Tom Bennett. I'm 55, a construction foreman by day, but my heart's always been with boats. At 35, I inherited a small waterfront lot on Chesapeake Bay from my grandfather, a modest 900-square-foot cottage with a private dock that was worth its weight in gold. For 3 years, every spare moment went into building my dream boat, Serenity's Call. She's 28 feet of handcrafted beauty, teak deck, custom fittings, my pride and joy. I'm not bragging, but that boat carries my soul. My father, a man of quiet wisdom, helped me install a wine cabinet below deck. His hands weren't as steady as they once were, but he insisted on doing the fine work himself. A boat without proper wine storage isn't worth having, he said, measuring the space with care. We spent a weekend perfecting a temperature-controlled, shock-resistant, built to last. He christened it with 3 bottles from his collection, rare vintages from the 1960s. These are for when you need them most, he told me, handing over a 1967 Bordeaux like it was a family heirloom. That cabinet wasn't just storage, it was his legacy, preserved in Serenity's Call. Life on the water was my paradise. I'd wake before dawn, coffee in hand, and watch the sunrise from the deck. The neighborhood was quiet, mostly retirees who valued peace and privacy. We'd wave, chat about tides or fishing, and go about our lives. It felt like I'd found my slice of heaven. Then the house next door sold. In late spring, 2 sisters moved in, Ellen and Claire Morgan, both in their mid-40s. They arrived like they were auditing the neighborhood, scanning everything with sharp eyes. I watched them from my dock that first morning, and something about their calculated stares set me on edge. They weren't soaking in the bay's beauty, they were plotting. I told myself to give them a chance, but my gut said trouble was coming. That afternoon, Ellen approached me on my dock, heels clicking like she owned the place. "Hi, I'm Ellen, your new neighbor and president of the neighborhood association," she said, her smile cold. "That's a stunning boat. Keeping it all to yourself seems a bit selfish, don't you think? We should talk about community sharing." I nearly laughed. Community sharing? This was my private dock, my boat, built with my own hands. Was she serious? Her sister, Claire, lingered behind, nodding like a rehearsed backup singer. "We're committed to bringing this neighborhood together," Ellen added, her tone implying I had no choice. I stayed polite, explaining that Serenity's Call was private property, not a community asset. Ellen's smile tightened. "You might want to reconsider," she said, voice icy. "This boat could be everyone's vision for what this community can be." Claire echoed her nod, and I felt a chill. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a demand. I'd lived here 15 years, kept to myself, never caused trouble. Now, these strangers acted like I owed them my boat. Standing on my dock, I wondered what they'd do next and how far I'd go to stop them. I hoped they'd back off, but a week later, I learned what Ellen meant by encouraging cooperation. It was a Saturday, and I'd driven to the hardware store in Annapolis for dock repair supplies. The trip took 2 hours, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening, maybe grilling fish on Serenity's Call. But as I pulled into my driveway, I heard music loud, thumping bass coming from my dock. My stomach sank. Maybe someone's boat broke down, I thought, or there was an emergency. I wasn't ready for what I found. 10 strangers were on my boat, drinking, dancing, sprawled across my deck like it was a rented venue. Plastic cups littered the teak I'd spent months sanding. Ellen stood at the bow, playing hostess with a drink in hand. When she saw me, she waved like I was a late guest. "You should thank me," she called. "You're the face of unity now." The audacity hit me like a punch. These people weren't lost, they were partying on my property, acting like I'd approved it. One guy filmed it, shouting about neighborhood unity and how the owner's cool with this. Rage and disbelief fought inside me. I wanted to storm aboard and throw them off, but their expectant stares froze me. They thought I'd joined the party. I tried calling neighbors for backup old man Harris, the Wilsons across the street, but no one answered. I was alone, watching strangers defile my sanctuary. I tried reasoning with them, explaining it was private property, but Ellen cut me off with that same fake smile. "Let's be neighborly," she said, dismissing me. I called the police, hoping they'd clear things up. The officer who arrived treated it like a minor dispute, not trespassing. Ellen spun a tale about community building, and he suggested we work it out like adults. When he left without acting, Ellen's smile grew smug. "You'll learn to be neighborly," she said, one way or another. As the police car drove off, I felt a fire ignite. This wasn't over. I tried the official route next. I researched the neighborhood association Ellen claimed to lead and found bylaws, a board, and complaint procedures. I filed a detailed report with photos of the party's aftermath: empty cups, scuffed deck, trampled cushions, and statements from neighbors who'd seen it. I thought I had an airtight case. 2 days later, the response came: complaint denied. My resistance to sharing neighborhood resources showed a lack of community spirit. They sided with Ellen, legitimizing her invasion. I was stunned. The system was rigged. That's when I changed tactics. If the rules wouldn't protect me, I'd outsmart them. I started acting defeated, avoiding Ellen and Claire, making Serenity's call look neglected. I scuffed the deck, left ropes loose, and let the boat appear abandoned. It killed me to mar my work, but I needed them to think they'd won. I spread a rumor through Mrs. Carter next door that I was selling the boat, knowing she'd gossip. Sure enough, Ellen and Claire took the bait. They grew bolder, planning a victory celebration on my boat twice as big, with catering and a DJ. They thought I'd given up. Meanwhile, I prepared. I swapped the dock's heavy-duty rope for a weaker one that looked identical but would cut easily. I studied the bay's currents, tides, and winds, mapping where a drifting boat would go. I researched the coastline, noting landmarks and distances. To anyone watching, I was just a meticulous boat owner. In reality, I was planning a lesson they'd never forget. The day of their victory celebration was perfect: calm seas, light breeze, clear skies. I checked my preparations. The weak rope was in place, my phone was charged for recording, and the current charts were confirmed. At 4 p.m., guests arrived, followed by a catering van labeled Bay Breeze Events. Ellen directed the setup like a wedding planner, while Claire snapped photos for their community newsletter. By 5 p.m., 15 strangers packed Serenity's call, treating it like their personal yacht club. Then I saw it. Ellen opening my father's wine cabinet. She pulled out the 1967 Bordeaux, the bottle Dad gave me for my wedding day, or a life-defining moment. She popped the cork with a flourish, pouring it into cheap paper cups. My vision blurred with rage. That wine wasn't just a drink, it was my father's memory, a promise I'd kept for 20 years. And there was Ellen, spilling it like it was nothing, her guests laughing and staining my deck. Standing on my bow, Ellen raised a glass of my father's wine and gave a speech about uniting the community and teaching selfish neighbors. She meant me. The nerve was staggering. My hands shook as I gripped the scissors I'd tucked in my pocket. For 3 seconds, I hesitated. Was this too far? Then I saw another splash of wine hit my deck, heard Ellen laugh about breaking the stubborn owner, and I snapped. The rope cut cleanly, just as I'd planned. Serenity's call began to drift, carried by the tide and breeze. At first, no one noticed. They were too busy drinking and dancing. The boat moved so smoothly, it took minutes for anyone to realize the dock was shrinking. A young guy filming a selfie shouted, "Why are we moving?" Panic spread like wildfire. Ellen screamed, "Bring the boat back," as if I could. I stepped onto the dock and called out, "You wanted open access? Enjoy open water." The look on Ellen's face realizing this was no accident was worth every sleepless night. From my hiding spot behind dock equipment, I recorded everything. Ellen's orders to treat the boat like it has no owner, the spilled wine, the chaos as guests turned on her. "You said the owner approved this," one woman yelled. Claire, cracking under pressure, shouted, "You always do this, Ellen. Charm doesn't cover crimes." Their united front crumbled. I also caught footage of the party setup and my father's open bottles evidence for whatever came next. The boat drifted toward the horizon, and I knew exactly where it was headed, the Bayshore Marina, hosting the annual Chesapeake Boat Show, the region's most exclusive maritime event. Million-dollar yachts, wealthy owners, champagne flutes everywhere. I'd calculated the currents to deliver them there, right into the heart of a world they didn't belong in. An hour later, someone's phone call reached the Coast Guard. I disabled the boat's radio the night before, just a few wires disconnected, easily fixed later. I wanted them to feel helpless, just as I had. The Coast Guard promised a rescue, but it wasn't urgent. Recreational boaters drifting in calm seas weren't a priority. Ellen tried calling lawyers, but spotty signals left her powerless. For the first time, she was at the mercy of forces she couldn't manipulate. When Serenity's call reached the Bayshore Marina, it was a spectacle. The boat show was in full swing, with tailored suits and designer dresses crowding the docks. Ellen's disheveled group sunburned, panicked, and out of place climbed off my modest boat onto a marina lined with mega yachts. A photographer captured it all: Ellen's wild hair, streaked makeup, and frantic gestures as resort staff charged $500 per person for emergency docking and $300 per hour for storage. A woman in pearls sneered, "Who let the charter crowd in?" The photo went viral, captioned with gems like, "When you crash a party, but the party crashes you." The Coast Guard towed Serenity's call back to my dock by sunset, issuing citations for unauthorized vessel operation. Ellen's attempt to paint me as a reckless criminal fell apart when I showed my evidence: time-stamped photos of no trespassing signs, audio of her incriminating words, and records of my failed complaints. My lawyer called it a textbook case of justified self-help. The association's lawyer withdrew Ellen's complaint, advising her to cut her losses. The social fallout was swift. Neighbors shared stories of Ellen and Claire's overreact, reorganizing the community garden, demanding access to private amenities. A viral post dubbed their drift Karen's cruise to karma. Their reputation tanked, and the association's new leadership promised to respect property rights. Ellen and Claire moved away 6 months later, unable to handle the costs or the shame. My dock returned to its peaceful state, and I became a local legend, the guy who taught entitled neighbors a lesson. These days, I sip coffee on Serenity's call, watching the bay's quiet beauty. The neighborhood feels like home again, and I've learned something: justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about letting people face the consequences of their actions. The ocean doesn't care about titles or charm, it carries you where you belong. Ellen and Claire wanted my boat as community property, so I let the maritime community show them what that meant. They paid dearly, in dollars and dignity, and I sleep just fine knowing I kept them safe while teaching a lesson they'll never forget. What do you think? Did I go too far, or was this justice served? Have you ever faced entitled people who pushed you to your limit? Share your thoughts below, especially on how we handle bullies and unfairness in life. Let's hear your stance: agree, disagree, or somewhere in between. Your story might just spark the next big conversation.